Okay, today I'm known as Irene Winchester Duckworth Hecht. Anybody who has any connection to me from the Philippines would have known me by my Philippine nickname, Nunny, and my family name, Duckworth. This conference is focused on Bataan, and the main message I want to share with you is how a World War II atrocity contributed to the survival of the internees of Santo Tomas internment camp. But before I get into that, I want to say something about this particular meeting. I was well aware when I returned from the Philippines to the US of the utter lack of knowledge of what the Philippines went through, and in particular the importance of this support of the Philippine population. I was well aware, even as a 12-year-old, that we would not have survived in the numbers we did at Santo Tomas without the undivided loyalty of the population around us. And in later years, I learned something of the practical assistance that was delivered during the war. So I applaud what this organization is trying to do. It's high time. But now let me turn to the Bataan Death March. Bottom line, war is horrible. Why we persist in pursuing that as a solution to our difficulties, I cannot fathom, and I have no answer to that. But I do know that war has come to have certain rules and behaviors that we accept as okay. But there are also instances when things cross that line. And when they do, we characterize them as atrocities. In my book, the Bataan Death March is definitely in the list of atrocities. There's nothing to excuse it. But ironically, that event did contribute to the survival of the internees of Santo Tomas internment camp in two ways. First, as I think you may have gleaned, Bataan didn't fall until I think it's around April 9th, and Corregidor about a month later. The Japanese army entered the open city of Manila on January 2nd. My mother and I were picked up the morning of January 3rd, delivered to Villamore Hall, and transferred on January the 4th to Santo Tomas, which became our residence until we left the Philippines in July of 1945, well after the liberation. One of my very vivid memories of the first weeks, months, actually nearly 3 months, at Santo Tomas was the behavior of the adults around me, which kind of mystified me. They endlessly complained. Well, you know, I can understand. We all left wonderful homes, gardens, servants galore. And we were tucked into a place where we were sleeping 30 to a room, initially on a concrete floor, and after a while on army camp cots. So yeah, it was not pleasant. But their line was this yellow vermin. You know what? MacArthur in 2 weeks will be back, and then he'll tell them what for. And everything will be normal again. This went on and on and on, but you know what stopped it? I can't give you the date because that's the one thing that in my childhood memories extending from age 9 to 12, I'm not good on precise dates. But at some point after the Bataan Death March, you've seen a lot of the films here, we were assembled, called to witness the films. That surrender that you saw with one general with his head in his hands. Yeah, we saw that. What was the purpose? To let us know that we were beaten. Yes, we did see some of the marching and the bayoneting. There was no question about what this was about. Now, it probably did not change attitudes quite as abruptly as I'm going to tell you, but what I noticed is the complaining stopped. And I can cite for you particular adjustments that occurred one after the other. One was we still had contact with the outside world, and many, many internees were able to order nipa huts from outside, which were delivered. And some of you have probably seen some pictures. Santo Tomas University turned into a little village of little huts all over the place. What this acknowledged was we're here for we don't know how long. It enabled families to get together, have their meals together, spend the day together. Eventually, the men were permitted to sleep in the nipa huts, and many of them did in the last year. That got them out of sleeping 32 a room, you know, with the mosquito nets and everything else. So that was one change. Another, we got some schooling. Now, we had no books, we had no paper, but an effort was made to organize some sort of education. The camp, I don't have time to describe all this, but we had organized all the food for the camp. Everything became regularized. We even had entertainment. I'd never seen a cabaret before in my life at age 9, but they had some evening performances. So that was one adjustment. Another thing that did affect me is very quickly they started organizing for Christmas 1942. And the plan was that every single child in the camp would get a gift. And so men with carpentry skills built wooden toys, women sewed things, and we had a gala in the Christmas of 1942. I won't mention any of the other Christmases, which had no celebration whatsoever, I can assure you. Anyway, so what was it that helped us? It was the fact that the adults came to terms finally with reality, and they adapted. And this was a highly adaptive community. These weren't aristocrats who'd been born with servants galore. There were men like my father who had left a very poor farm in Illinois to go and make his fortune. He was quite capable of building things. He was mad on planting gardens, which eventually did materialize, gave us some extra food. So the fact that the adults came to terms with reality is one of the things we can thank the Bataan Death March for. The second thing was an outright gift. And this is something that even this conference has ignored. Yes, there were thousands of soldiers, overwhelmingly, probably 80% of them Philippine, but there was also a battalion of Army nurses. And the Japanese never did, apparently, lump them in with the men. They did not go on the Death March. I don't know precisely what they did with them. All I know is that one morning, on the main plaza of Santo Tomas University, a bus unloaded and all these women in Army uniforms got off. I don't know exactly how many there were, 30 to 70, I don't know, whatever. They still had their commanding officer. They were scattered around because there was no place that all of them could be put together. So I knew 2 of them on our corridor just down the hall from my room. And they immediately went into military mode. They organized into 3 8-hour rotations. We had a sort of infirmary where they organized that. They had no medicines, but I can tell you that the chief ailments were malaria and dysentery. And bed care was a godsend, and I experienced that more than once. And they had 3 categories. those who had a liquid diet, those who could have some solids, and those who had a near normal diet. It meant you didn't have to go stand in line. You didn't have a quarter of a mile to go to the bathroom. You had a bed, a mattress, by golly, and you could rest. And for the most part, you stayed a maximum of 3 days, and then you could walk out again. So, one was a psychological gift, and the other was a practical gift. And to each of those of us, like myself, who survived, probably owe their lives. Thank you.
Okay, this is the first segment. Again, I want to thank Sasha, Francine, Roy, Irene, and John. Let's give them another warm applause. I also want to have to stand up so we can have a quick photo op, please. Photographers, here's your moment.